With the Premier League season starting this Friday, I thought it's now time to give you guys my predictions ahead of the Premier League season. Like always guys, can we please drop a like on today's video? The more likes we get, the better the video does. It reaches out to a much wider audience. Also comment below your predictions ahead of the Premier League season. I know a lot of you guys are not going to agree with me, but that's the beauty of these predictions. And if you're new to the channel, please subscribe, and if you're on TikTok, make sure you're following me on there as well. We're going to start from the teams that I think will finish at the bottom of the Premier League, and then we're going to work our way up. And yeah, just a quick disclaimer, it's going to be quite difficult to predict where some of these teams are going to finish because the transfer window is still open, but I've generalised it where I think the team is roughly going to finish. So yeah, let's get on with the prediction video, and hopefully you guys, some of you agree with what I'm going to say, and if you don't, obviously let me know down below. So yeah, the team which I think is going to finish bottom of the Premier League is Sheffield United. The reason why I'm saying this is because what they've done so far in the transfer window has not been nowhere near good enough. I think they are much weaker to what they were in the Championship. Obviously, they did have a few loan players which were, you know, had an impact to the side. They've already lost one of their key players who's now gone over to France. And also, another one of their players in Birch is on his way to potentially Burnley as well. To lose your key players where you need to be trying to stay up in the Premier League and building a side that's going to try and, you know, climb up the Premier League table, they're not doing such a good job at it, and I can definitely see them making some last minute signings before the window ends. But are they going to be good enough? I'm not too sure. I don't have them staying up at all. I really don't. And as a Luton fan, everyone keeps talking about Luton doing the derby, you know, and getting little points. Well, I actually think we're in a much better position, and we are a lot stronger than what currently Sheffield United are right now. So for me, the team that's finishing bottom is Sheffield United. The team that I think is finishing 19th in the Premier League is going to be Wolves. Wolves, for me, from when I watched Luton play them in a pre-season friendly, yes, I know it's only a pre-season friendly, I just don't see how they're going to score goals against the better sides in the division. I don't think their recruitment's been good, and if you read what's happening on and off the pitch, I can imagine that the manager's going to get sacked or is going to leave at some point during the Premier League season. I just don't think that squad is as good as it used to be, and I think for a while now Wolves have slowly been declining in the Premier League and in the transfer market. So I definitely think Wolves are going to go down this season. The team which I do think is going to finish 18th in the Premier League is going to be Everton. Now, this is because of what they've done in the transfer market so far. I don't think that squad is clearly good enough. I don't know how they're going to score goals either. Calvert-Lewin can't stay fit throughout a whole season. You would have thought Everton after last season would have made some better signings with Sean Dyche as the manager, but because they've splashed cash on players that are clearly not worth the money, they're in a situation where can they spend more money? No, they can't because of financial fair play. And if you look at the squad, yes, Sean Dyche could probably do a certain job and probably keep a certain amount of clean sheets, but I actually think the Everton board are going to sack him. I really do, and when they eventually do sack him, that's when I think Everton are just going to go on a downhill spiral, and you are going to now see Everton in the Championship, in my personal opinion. Next up, we have my team. I do think Luton will finish 17th in the Premier League. I do think we'll just finish just above those relegation places. I think our squad, you know, we've improved it massively in the transfer window. We've brought in some really good players that I think are going to shock a few people. I think our home form is going to be absolutely crucial. I think we're going to be really direct, and we're going to cause a lot of teams problems because there's not many direct teams in the Premier League, and that's how we're going to get our points. We're definitely not going to do a derby. We're going to surprise a lot of people, as I've already mentioned, and yes, I think Luton are going to finish above those relegation places and have another year in the Premier League. So right now I'm going to predict teams which I think are going to finish between 16th and 13th in the Premier League. The 4 teams which I think are going to be finishing in this section are Forest, Crystal Palace, West Ham and also Bournemouth. The reason why I think Bournemouth are going to finish in this section is because I think they're going to be a little bit more clearer from those relegation places. I think the signings which they've made are going to shock a few people, and they are underrated signings. I think the manager also is going to shock a few people, and I think a lot of people just expect Luton and Bournemouth straight away, as the two smallest clubs in the Premier League, to go straight back down. But I think the recruitment from both sides have been very smart. It's been thought about, and for that reason I do think Bournemouth will just finish above those relegation places, but more comfortable between 16th and 13th. Another club which I think will finish in that particular area is West Ham. West Ham at this moment in time have not made a signing, which I'm absolutely baffled by. The current, Europa League conference winners, you would have thought, playing in the Europa League, they would be making more signings, but they haven't really done that. The money which they got from, Declan Rice, they haven't reinvested it into other players as of yet. I can expect West Ham to make a few signings before the window. That's why I'm putting them in this section, because they could make a really good signing in the next couple of weeks. That's the problem when you do prediction videos during the transfer window. It's really difficult to actually pick precisely where they're going to, position themselves in the Premier League. But the actual current squad which West Ham have got, I do think is stronger than the ones that are currently in the bottom three which I've selected, and that's my reason for why I think West Ham will finish between 16th and 13th. I don't think they're going to have an amazing season, but that squad is more than capable of staying up, in my opinion. The next club is Crystal Palace. I think we're going to finish between 16th and 13th. Under Roy Hodgson, yes, it's good. Youngsters doing really well, but I just feel like we're just going to get a normality with Palace. They are just a team that consistently, stays up in the Premier League. Would it surprise me if they fall in the bottom three? No, it wouldn't surprise me. I feel like Palace, they've got away with it. They've always fallen to Roy when things go wrong. Now, if things go wrong at the first half of the season, what is their plan B? That's what I'm really interested to see. But I feel like Roy, he'll just do the job because of his experience of knowing the Premier League and knowing how to get results. But if things don't go his way and he loses his job halfway through the season, I could definitely see Palace being one of those teams that could actually go down, just like we saw with Leicester. I think Leicester was a prime example last season, where it doesn't matter how valuable your squad players are. If you don't recruit smartly, or they don't turn up most weeks, you're going to go down. And Leicester being the most expensive team to go down from the Premier League, I think it's a big reality check for some Premier League clubs that have just been, just floating above those relegation places. And I think one of those clubs is Palace. And the last club which I think will finish between 13th and 16th is Nottingham Forest. Cooper, for me, if he stays at Forest, they will stay up comfortable. I think they're doing a little bit better than what they did last year. Obviously, with the amount of signings they made last year, they're not going to repeat that again. They need to find a few more additions within their current squad. I know they're looking for a goalkeeper right now. Bit like Luton, how we've been looking for a goalkeeper. It's probably a really hard and difficult position to try and recruit in, but once they get that goalkeeper in, maybe they can push a little bit higher up the league. But as long as they keep Cooper, I don't think Forest will go down. But the same with Palace. If they get rid of the manager, it wouldn't surprise me if Forest go down, because if you look at that squad which they've got, yes, there's some really good players in there, but they haven't been together for a very long time. There isn't like a unity within the group, that togetherness which I feel like which goes in Luton's favour a little bit when times get tough. Have you got those characters within your squad to help you get back up again? And those are my question marks for Forest, and that's why I think they're going to finish between 16th and 13th. The next section on which I think clubs are going to finish in is between the 12th and 9th place in the Premier League. The one club which I do think will surprise a lot of teams this year and a lot of fans is Burnley. With the style of football which Burnley like to play, it is typical Premier League football with the pass and move. A bit like Man City on what Guardiola did, because Company is obviously former Manchester City. So I do think that you are going to see, a little bit of Man City within the Burnley setup like they already have done. I feel like their signings which they've made have been really good signings, and I feel like they're just going to be comfortable. They've got much more of a togetherness within that with that group of players compared to the teams which I think will finish below them in the Premier League. So that's why I think, you know, Burnley and company, they're going to finish, you know, a good solid mid-table finish. And I think a lot of Burnley fans will take that, considering, you know, they're the first time back in the Premier League with a new manager, which isn't Sean Dyche. The next club which I think is going to finish between 12th and 9th is Fulham. I think under Marco Silva, it's pretty obvious on what he can do when he's had a full season in the Premier League. He started the football as well. I felt the way Fulham played last year was really good, and I like some of the players which they've managed to keep hold of as well. And I just think they're just going to have another average season, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think the signings they've made are going to be competitive enough to compete for any European places this season. So that's why I just think Fulham are just going to have another average season. The next club which I do think is going to finish between 12th and 9th is Brentford. Brentford, without Ivan Toney, I haven't seen him replaced him yet, so it'd be interesting to see how they're going to score their goals this year. But they've still been very smart in their recruitment, Brentford. They're always a very smart team. Obviously with David Raya as well potentially leaving, there's a few question marks there, but I do think they're going to have a solid season. The way they do their business, Brentford, is really good, and with the window still open, I can see a few smart signings still to be made. But I also think the group of players which they've currently got as well, a few of them now have had, you know, a couple of seasons in the Prem now. They've stepped up. They've more than comfortable at, you know, giving teams a good game of football. And I just feel like Brentford, they're just going to remain as a mid-table side, not pushing for those European places just yet. Potentially next year, depending on how well they recruit. And the final club which I think is going to finish between 12th and 9th is Aston Villa. I think with Aston Villa competing in Europe, and I actually think they're going to go far in Europe under Unai Emery, I think there's a real potential that the league's going to have an impact. So that's why I think they're going to be at not as high as they should be, but I do think they are one of the, you know, favourites to win that European Conference League, and I do think they're going to go all the way. Unai Emery's record in Europe is just unreal. The group of players which they've got, the signings they've made so far, you know, it's exciting times to be an Aston Villa fan, especially in Europe. And I just think European football is going to take more of a priority over the Premier League this season. So the next part of the video, I am going to try and predict teams that I think are going to finish between 8th and 5th. The first team which I think are going to finish in those positions are Liverpool. I don't think Liverpool are going to get top 4. They haven't recruited enough. I think Klopp's just going to keep complaining and complaining. And I actually think there's going to be a lot more pressure on Klopp this season. If they fail to get in those top 4 places again, could he lose his job? Could there be a manager replacement? You know, we know what Klopp is like in his tenure as a manager. After he gets to a certain point, can he, you know, climb back up? Can he take, despite going a step back, can he take, you know, a couple of steps forward? I just don't think the recruitment's been good enough from Liverpool. It really hasn't. I think the owners are coming out saying like they don't have much money to spend. I just feel like you need to get players in. You need to be a bit smarter in your recruitment. You know, if you need a player in a position, go and get it. And I still think they're weak in certain areas up top, in the midfield as well. Could Trent play as a midfielder? Who knows? But then if he does, who plays right back? So there's a few question marks there. I just don't think Liverpool are as strong as they could be. With Newcastle, I feel like with them in the Champions League, I think that's going to have an impact on where they finish in the Premier League. I feel like European football will take a little bit of a priority, but also the recruitment which they've done, I just don't think it's going to push them into top 4. I think what went in Newcastle's favour last year was other teams not performing. Chelsea, Tottenham, you know, and Liverpool, they didn't perform, and that gave Newcastle an opportunity to finish in the top 4 place. They maintain a consistency throughout the season, whereas I don't think this year that consistency is going to be there. Next up, we have Brighton, who I think are going to finish between 8th and 5th. Brighton, for me, with the signings they've made, they're very smart signings despite losing a few key players. I feel like the style of football they play as well, it's such a good style of football. It gets results, and I'm glad that we're playing Brighton. Like, as a Luton fan, I'm glad that we're playing Brighton first, because I feel like after the first 10 games, that's when I'm going to start seeing Brighton really kick on. And I just do think they're going to finish in the Europa League places at the end of the season. As a Luton fan, I just aspire to be like a Brighton, because what they've done, it's just unreal, and I just don't think they're going to have any problems. Their manager, if he carries on the way he's going, he's probably going to get snapped up at some point. Could a top club, you know, sack another manager at some point during the season? Could he then go to that club? That's the only way I see Brighton having an impact and not finishing it in those positions in the Premier League. And the final club which I think are going to finish between 8th and 5th is Tottenham. Now Tottenham, I don't think are going to get top 4. I just feel like with the way that club is, the recruitment's just nowhere near good enough at all. Under the former Celtic boss, he's been successful everywhere he's been. I just don't think with, you know, Daniel Levy as, you know, the football operations, the director of football there, I just don't think he's the right man to be making those football decisions. He's probably one of the best businessmen in the Premier League, but when it comes to making like football operational decisions, he's just not clued up, despite actually hiring some really good managers. You know, he's just not there, and I just don't think they're going to finish above, you know, the likes of Chelsea, Arsenal, Man United and Manchester City. I just don't think they're going to do it. Would they prove me wrong? It wouldn't surprise me if they finish 4th. It wouldn't. But I just don't think they've got enough in the tank to finish 4th. I think that defensively they're nowhere near. Goalkeeper area is the problem with Lloris. I just think he's too, you know, error prone, and I just don't think they're going to finish in the top 4. Talking of top 4, these are the 4 teams which I think are going to finish top 4 in the Premier League: Arsenal, Man City, Manchester United and also Chelsea. Now Chelsea I do think are going to finish 4th. The way Poch is with younger players as well, at Chelsea there's so many youngsters there, I feel like he's going to get the best out of them. I do also think they're going to listen to him as well. You saw the way he was like at Tottenham, he was unreal, you know, and he worked so well with the youngsters. And if given time, and Chelsea, that's what Chelsea have got to do, they've got to give him the whole season. If you don't give him the whole season, then I don't think Chelsea will finish top 4. I'm literally predicting this on the basis that he's going to stay the whole season. If he does, I think they finish top 4. If he doesn't, I don't think they're going to finish top 4. And then that gives an opportunity for the likes of Liverpool, you know, Newcastle, Tottenham and also Brighton to compete for that last place spot. But they've got to listen to him, Poch. Poch is, for me, is one of the best managers in the Premier League. I just don't think he works well with world-class players. However, he does work with players that have ability but can develop them into world-class players. And we have seen it, what he did with the likes of, you know, with Harry Kane at Tottenham. He made Harry Kane into a world-class player, in my opinion. So, look, lots of, you know, listening and, you know, just being patient is needed during this Premier League season. We know what football fans are like, we know what football owners are like. They just want, you know, instant success, which never always happens in football. You know, some clubs get it, some clubs don't. You've just got to be patient. Are Chelsea willing to be patient for once? I'm not too sure, but I reckon they're going to finish 4th in this Premier League season. The team which I think are going to finish 3rd in the Premier League is Manchester United. I think the recruitment has been okay. Like, they have looked at areas and, you know, I've noticed that does need to improve. But I just don't think they've got enough in the tank to compete with Manchester City and also Arsenal, who I think are just a level above. I think United are still about 3 transfer windows away from being where Arsenal and Manchester City are. And that's just being, you know, polite there. I do think they've got the right man in charge, but the same again, it goes with Chelsea manager with Poch. Are you willing to give the manager time to do well? I felt, you know, he done well in his first season with Manchester United. Are you going to give him another year where potentially you're not going to compete for the title, but you're going to compete with other trophies? You're in the Champions League, you can compete there. It's just a few question marks, that's all I've got there. And then who do I think is going to win the Premier League between Arsenal and Manchester City? I do think Arsenal are going to win the Premier League this year. Arsenal, for me, have identified areas on where they were weak at and improved on. I think they've learnt a huge amount from last season on what it's like to be in a title race, and I feel like they've got to have more about them this year. I feel like they've got a lot more squad depth as well. The start of football, I think Arteta himself has learnt. Of course, they are a young team as well, but I felt like they learned so much from last year. And I feel like with Manchester City, with certain players that have gone, I feel like they've maybe just gone a step backwards a little bit, you know, which is a very small step backwards. But I just don't think they are gonna win the league. I think it's gonna go right to the end. You know, I don't think it's gonna be, you know, clearly obvious, you know, win by 6 points, win by 8 points and so on. I do think it's going to go down to the last game of the season, and I just think Arsenal are going to be the team that do it. Pep is Pep, you know, I'm pretty sure, you know, he will have something up his sleeve, but I just don't want Manchester City winning it again. It's a bit boring, so I'm going to go with Arsenal, someone different, and yeah, I think it's going to be their year this year in the Premier League. So yeah, those are my predictions, guys. Please let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Drop a like on the video if you did enjoy it. Follow me across all my social media, including TikTok as well, and yeah, I'll see you all in the next video.